Welcome to this episode of the Aquarist's Edge, a podcast for home aquarists just like you. Learn more about how to keep a thriving aquarium and discover ideas and tips to give your aquarium the edge. And now, over to our host, Arthur Preston.
Guppies have for many years been very popular among fish keepers. They have vibrant colors, they come with different fin shapes, they breed easily. They're often the fish that people start out with as they begin the fish keeping hobby. Children are very drawn to them. It is just a fun fish. And yet there seems to be a contention among many people today that guppies are no longer regarded as beginner fish. They feel that the hardiness of these fish has diminished over time. So is that true? We need to ask the question, are modern guppies less hardy than those from years in the past? Well, in this episode, we're going to dig a bit into the scientific aspects of guppy breeding. We'll take a short look at the genetics of guppies and environmental factors that influence their resilience, as well as give some practical advice for home fish keepers looking to ensure that they buy hardy guppies. So let's take a look at the historical context of guppies. Guppies have been kept in aquariums for well over a century, with wild populations being the norm until selective breeding began to take hold in the mid-1900s. This selective breeding has led to a wide variety of colour variations and fin shapes, but it's also introduced significant genetic concerns. There are studies that indicate that excessive inbreeding can adversely affect traits such as body size, fertility, and susceptibility to disease. Inbreeding reduces genetic diversity, which is crucial for the health of any species. And again, there's research that shows that guppies from heavily inbred lines exhibit lower fitness levels compared to their wild counterparts. A study published in the journal Aquaculture found that inbred lines of guppies had significantly higher mortality rates when exposed to pathogens compared to wild strains. This loss of genetic variability can lead to increased vulnerability to disease and environmental stresses. But what about where guppies come from? We're not likely to go out and get wild guppies. So how is it that in home aquariums, guppies seem to not be as hardy any longer? Well, the source of guppies significantly impacts their hardiness. Fish from local breeders often exhibit better health compared to those purchased from the large retail chains. Again, this is a generalization, but I think anecdotally we would see that there may be some truth in this. Retail guppies are frequently subjected to poor living conditions during shipping and storage, which can lead to stress and illness on arrival. And many aquarists report that locally bred guppies tend to be more resilient, as they are often raised in conditions that closely mimic their natural habitats. And again, a disclaimer, I'm not knocking any particular retailer here. I'm not knocking the big box stores, as they call them. Simply saying that when you are importing guppies by the thousands, we don't know what conditions those fish are bred in. We don't always know what conditions they're shipped in. And although we do have local importers who we certainly can trust, there is a higher risk involved. Many of these guppy imports are coming from very, very far away, sitting in storage containers, being put on airplanes and being flown thousands of kilometers until they land in the country. But there are other influences that also impact guppy hardiness. For example, the environment. And yes, guppies are adaptable fish. However, their hardiness is influenced by environmental conditions such as water quality, the temperature, and pH levels. Studies have shown that guppies thrive in a range of conditions, but are particularly sensitive to abrupt changes. For instance, wild guppies can tolerate a wider range of pH, from as low as 5.5 up to 8, compared to those bred in captivity. And this adaptability is crucial to survive in fluctuating environments in the wild. Stress is a significant factor that also affects the health of guppies. Factors such as overcrowding, aggressive tank mates, and sudden changes in water quality can compromise their immune system. Guppies that are exposed to high-stress environments are far more susceptible to diseases like ick and fin rot. And these health issues are often exacerbated by the poor conditions found in many commercial breeding operations. The susceptibility of modern guppies to diseases also raises concerns about their overall hardiness, and inbreeding has been linked to compromised immune responses in various species, including guppies. The studies show that fish with reduced genetic diversity may exhibit higher mortality rates when exposed to pathogens. And this trend suggests that while guppies may still be marketed as hardy beginner fish, many modern strains lack the resilience that is seen in wild populations. So what do you do as a home fish keeper? Someone who just wants to put some healthy, hardy guppies in a tank for your enjoyment? Well, there are a couple of things you can do and things you need to look out for. So the first thing is to choose a reputable breeder. Go and find local breeders who prioritize health of their fish, because these breeders are often maintaining better living conditions. Consider retailers that you have confidence in. Sometimes these are online, sometimes these are in person. But go and check. Ask them about the fish. Where do they come from? How long have they been? Have you had stock? How long were they in storage? Where do they come from? Check these things. Don't be afraid to ask the retailer. At the end of the day, you are purchasing a live animal that you need to take home, put into a tank, and care for. You want to make sure that you're getting good stock. You also want to look for genetic diversity. Go for mixed strains rather than highly specialized or selectively bred varieties, because mixed strains tend to have greater genetic diversity. Of course, if you're looking for a particular strain or wanting to do high inbreeding, that's a different conversation. But for the average home guppy keeper, go for mixed strains. You could also consider purchasing endlers, or endlers live bearers, or Pachilia wingii, and again, I think that's the correct pronunciation, are generally hardier than many fancy guppy strains, and they can crossbreed. And often there are fantastic colours that come from crossing guppies and endlers. There'll be those who disagree with me, who say that you are compromising both endless strains and guppy strains by doing so. But there are so many mixed fish on the market today, I really don't think it makes that much difference, if I'm quite honest. I really think there are people who want to keep pure endlers. They will breed pure endlers, and they will take the various colour strains and varieties of endlers, and they will breed those as they need to, in the same way that certain guppy breeders will look for particular guppy colours, guppy strains, and they will breed those. But for the average home fish keeper, if you're wanting to strengthen the genetic diversity of your fish and make sure they are hardy, there's nothing wrong with putting endlers with your guppies. Also look for physical appearance and for behavior. Unhealthy fish will appear lethargic or show signs of fin damage or discoloration. As alluded to earlier, don't be afraid to ask questions. Ask breeders about their breeding practices and how they manage genetic diversity. Ask about the health history of the stock, and then consider the age of the fish. Younger fish that are about 6 months old may be more susceptible to health issues due to a lack of maturity. So look for fish that are a little bit older than that if you want to be sure of their hardiness. So what do we do with all this information? Well, I think it's true to say that there are some fish keeping enthusiasts, even some people that we would look up to as gurus in fish keeping, who would argue that contemporary strains are absolutely less hardy due to genetic issues stemming from selective breeding. But there are also others who, with the same passion, will tell you that with proper care, such as maintaining optimal water conditions, guppies can thrive regardless of their breeding background. So the debate over whether modern guppies are less hardy than their predecessors is absolutely complex and multifaceted. And while evidence suggests that selective breeding has led to decreased hardiness due to genetic bottlenecks and increased susceptibility to disease, many factors contribute to the overall health of these fish. So it's really important for new fish keepers, and indeed those with a little more experience, to consider these insights when selecting and caring for guppies. By making informed choices about sourcing and understanding the genetic implications of breeding practices, we can all work towards having healthy, hardy guppies for many years to come.
That's it for this episode of the Aquarist Edge. Please consider subscribing to this podcast so that you don't miss further episodes. We would love it if you would also rate and review the podcast, as this helps make it visible to others. Until next time, keep learning and discovering, and keep finding your Aquarist Edge in this captivating and fascinating hobby.